one question I often get is, does having services in a community basically draw more people to that community? This is one of the things you'll often hear communities fight back about, like if there's a shelter or if there's maybe some drop-in services being proposed in an area. And what we know from data, when we go and actually ask people, who are experiencing homelessness, like where they last were housed or where they lost their housing, almost always, more than 80% of the time, people are homeless in the communities in which they grew up or where they last had sort of a stable life. So, I mean, countless times, just anecdotally, I've experienced or heard from our outreach staff, like so-and-so lives under the bridge and they went to high school like a mile away. And part of that is because people tend to stay where their networks are, where they're familiar with, where they're comfortable. Homelessness is a very dangerous experience. People are very, very vulnerable. People experiencing homelessness are much more likely to be victims of crime than to be perpetrators of crime. And folks, understandably, that are unsheltered, especially that have been unsheltered for a while, really have trust concerns with people they don't know. And so they're often going to stay in an area where they're comfortable, they're familiar, people know them, they know the other people. So you hear this a lot, like San Francisco, like is everybody flocking to San Francisco because they have so many services? Honestly, what's being offered is still nowhere near enough to what people need. So what the data shows is people are generally living unsheltered in the places where they grew up, and also like really not flocking to places where there are services, because again, like the services that are available are really they aren't adequate. The other thing I'll say is there are people experiencing homelessness everywhere. Not providing services doesn't make them go away. It just means that you then have a population of people that are unsupported and potentially, going to need to resort to things that we don't want people to do, like stealing food, stealing money, not having treated medical care, not having their mental health and medical needs treated, which, like, if we're thinking societally, like, that's way more expensive and has a much bigger impact on our community than, like, letting people drop in for showers and getting lunch and maybe connect to a case manager. So I also know that places where there are drop-in services or shelters, the staff and the administration are very, very conscientious about making sure there's a low impact on the community. So there are usually like pretty strict rules around like, not loitering outside or, making sure we don't have encampments near these areas. Basically, we need to have those services in our communities and we don't want to get kicked out. So that's what I gotta say.